Ashley was like a light in the middle of darkness. At just 25 years old, the young woman lived with her mother in a modest home in the suburbs. Life had not been kind to them. Her father had left early, leaving a void that was hard to fill. Bills piled up and their nights were often filled with worries and uncertainties. But none of that seemed to dim the joy that overflowed from Ashley's soul. She carried within her a rare resilience, a strength that seemed bigger than herself. Her voice, soft yet powerful, was her refuge. Since childhood, singing had been her way of turning pain into beauty, of finding meaning even in the hardest moments. Every afternoon she would take her simple stool and set it up in the town square. That square, with its aging trees and worn benches, became Ashley's makeshift stage. With bright eyes and a gentle smile, she sang melodies that felt like warm embraces to anyone passing by. Her lyrics spoke of love, gratitude for life's small moments, and hope in tough times. The faces in the crowd varied between strangers and some familiar ones. An elderly woman with gray hair who always stopped to listen. A young couple who would occasionally drop some coins into the hat Ashley placed in front of her. But the reactions were always the same. Teary eyes, smiles appearing even on tired faces. Ashley never expected anything in return. For her, singing was just her way of contributing to the world, of spreading joy where there was emptiness. But life, always unpredictable, had something greater in store for her. That day, as she sang one of her most heartfelt songs, Ashley had no idea her voice would be much more than just a beautiful melody. It would become the reason someone rediscovered the value of life. Mark was the picture of a man who once had it all. At 45, he had been a successful entrepreneur, known for his ability to turn ideas into profitable businesses. He was also a devoted husband, someone who seemed born to make his wife, Christina, smile. But life, with its unexpected blows, took away everything Mark cherished. The decline began subtly, with nights spent drinking to ease work stress. What once seemed like an innocent escape quickly turned into a destructive habit. Alcohol consumed Mark's routine and started to erode everything around him. His marriage, once solid, became fragile. Christina tried everything to help him, but Mark was trapped in a spiral of self-sabotage. When she finally decided to leave, he lost not only his wife but also the last anchor keeping him grounded. Heartbroken and with his business on the verge of collapse, Mark spiraled completely. Friends drifted away and he isolated himself from the world. His days were filled with regret and alcohol, his nights consumed by suffocating loneliness. He saw himself as a complete failure, unable to glimpse any hope on the horizon. That specific morning, Mark woke up with a firm decision. He no longer wanted to live. The thought had been growing in his mind for weeks, but now it felt inevitable. With tears streaming down his face and his heart crushed by the weight of sorrow, he put on his coat, left the house and started walking. His destination was a nearby bridge, a place where he could silence his pain once and for all. As he walked through the streets, each step felt heavier than the last. The tall buildings around him, once symbols of success and progress, now cast oppressive shadows. He barely noticed the people around him or the city's sounds. His mind was focused only on his final decision. But fate, always unpredictable, had other plans for Mark. As he passed by a square, an unexpected sound cut through his thoughts like a beam of light in the darkness. It was a sweet voice, filled with emotion, singing a melody that seemed meant for him. Mark stopped, not knowing why. And for the first time in months he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. Mark's walk to the bridge felt inevitable. His mind was consumed by pain and he barely noticed the world around him. But as he passed through the town square, something interrupted the flow of his dark thoughts. A soft yet powerful melody filled the air. It was as if the music were calling out to him, holding him back, preventing him from taking another step forward. He looked around and found the source of the sound. A young woman sitting on a stool holding a simple guitar, her face lit by a gentle smile. It was Ashley. Her voice carried an energy that calmed and touched everyone who heard it. She was singing about life's ups and downs, the battles everyone faces, but also about gratitude. Gratitude for life and for what remains after the storms. Mark stood still. Every word seemed to penetrate his soul, as if the song had been written just for him, as if she knew all his thoughts and pains. He had never felt anything like it. For a brief moment the weight on his chest seemed lighter, as if the darkness surrounding him began to lift. Suddenly, tears started streaming down Mark's face. He had promised himself he would never cry again, but he was completely overwhelmed by an emotion he could barely describe. It wasn't sadness or happiness. It was something different. Something he hadn't felt in so long that he barely remembered what it was. Hope. When Ashley finished singing, the small group that had gathered around her clapped. But Mark remained frozen. He felt an inexplicable force pushing him forward until his feet carried him to her. His eyes were red from crying and his voice came out shaky but firm. "You saved my life. Thank you." Ashley, not fully understanding the impact of his words, looked at him with a gentle smile and replied, "I'm glad you enjoyed the song." Mark nodded, but deep down he knew it wasn't just a song. It was the reason he was there, breathing, alive. At that moment he made a different decision. His life wouldn't end that day. Ashley had no idea, but her voice had become a turning point for someone who had lost everything, except the chance to start over. The night Mark heard Ashley's voice was not just another day in his life. It was the beginning of his transformation. When he returned home, the emptiness that had consumed him was replaced by a spark of determination. He knew his life needed to change. He couldn't remain trapped in the cycle of self-destruction that had brought him to that point. As he entered his home, Mark faced the bottles of alcohol that had been his companions for so long. He looked at them with resolve, feeling disgusted by how he had let them take control of his life. Without hesitation he gathered them all and threw them in the trash. It was a symbolic act, but a powerful one. For the first time in years he chose life. In the days that followed, Mark began to make real changes. He established a simple yet effective routine. Morning walks to clear his mind, healthy meals to restore his energy, and exercise to strengthen his body. Each small step felt like a victory over the chaos that had consumed him for so long. Meanwhile, he began to reconnect with the world he had abandoned. He reached out to old contacts and clients who had lost faith in him, apologizing for his failures. Mark was honest about what he had been through and his determination to rebuild everything. Slowly, people started to believe in him again. The hard work began to pay off. His business, which had been on the brink of bankruptcy, started to recover. Mark poured more time and effort into it than ever before, and the results were remarkable. In a short time, his company not only bounced back but also surpassed the success it had achieved before his downfall. He became an even better version of himself. A renewed leader, someone who understood the value of resilience. But there was one piece missing from his new life: Christina. Mark had never forgotten her. He remembered every smile, every tender gesture, and how she had believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. He knew he had made many mistakes and hurt her deeply, but now he felt he had something worth offering. A version of himself that was worth it. Mark gathered his courage and decided he needed to make amends for the greatest mistake of his life. He knew he couldn't promise anything beyond his daily effort to be better, but he wanted Christina to know that she was and always would be the love of his life. Mark understood that the biggest challenge in his journey of redemption wouldn't be rebuilding his business or regaining his health. It would be winning Christina back. He didn't expect it to be easy. There were wounds he had caused, and the time they had spent apart didn't erase the impact of his actions. But he also knew he couldn't give up without trying. With his heart pounding, Mark picked up the phone and called Christina. His voice trembled, but he was direct. He asked for one conversation, one chance to explain himself. There was a silence on the other end of the line that felt like it lasted an eternity, until she finally responded with a hesitant yes. On the day they were to meet, Mark arrived at the cafe they had agreed on. He wore a simple shirt but looked impeccable. His posture was different. There was a calmness, a maturity, something Christina almost didn't recognize. But what struck her the most was the absence of the smell of alcohol that had become so familiar in the last years they were together. When he saw her, Mark's eyes filled with tears, but he held himself together. They sat down, and before any other words could be spoken, he began. "Christina, I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything I put you through." With emotion in his voice, Mark poured out his heart. He told her about hitting rock bottom, about how he had almost lost his life, and how Ashley's music had made him see that he needed to fight to live. He explained every step of his transformation, from quitting alcohol to rebuilding his life. Every step I've taken to become a better man has been because I realized I didn't want to live in a world where you didn't exist by my side. Christina, you are the love of my life, and even if I don't deserve it, I'm here to ask for a second chance." Christina was silent for a few moments, visibly moved. Mark's words were sincere, but what truly touched her heart were the visible changes. He seemed like a new person, someone who had faced his demons and emerged stronger. She sighed and said, "Mark, I never stopped loving you. But I need to be sure this is real, that you won't put me through all of that again." He gently held her hands and replied, "You have my word. But more than that, I want my actions to show how much I've changed." It was the beginning of a new chapter for them. Christina decided to give Mark the second chance he had so desperately asked for, and slowly they rebuilt the trust and love they had lost. It didn't take long for them to realize that the feelings between them were as strong as before, perhaps even stronger. A few months later, Mark knelt before Christina with tears in his eyes and a ring in his hand. He asked to pick up where they had left off, but this time, promising a life full of love, respect, and partnership. Christina said yes, and they married again, celebrating not only their union but also the strength of a love that had withstood time and adversity. It was the return of love, but also a new beginning for two souls who chose to fight for a second chance together. Mark's life had changed in extraordinary ways. He had regained everything he once believed was lost: love, purpose, and a new perspective. Yet even amidst the happiness he had rebuilt, there was a debt of gratitude he could never ignore. Ashley's face and voice remained vivid in his memory. The young singer, with her melody full of hope, had been the turning point in his life. He knew he had to find a way to give back. One sunny afternoon, Mark made a decision. He would return to the square where everything began. When he arrived, the scene was exactly as he remembered. The simplicity of the place, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and of course Ashley's unmistakable voice filling the air. There she was, with the same guitar, the same serene expression, and the same energy that seemed to light up everything around her. Mark stood at a distance for a moment, listening. A wave of emotions washed over him. Every note she sang was a living reminder of how much his life had changed since that day. Taking a deep breath, he approached her with a warm smile. "Hello, Ashley. I'm not sure if you remember me, but some time ago you saved my life." Ashley looked at him, surprised, but quickly recognized the man who, months earlier, had been moved to tears by her music and thanked her so deeply. "Of course I remember you. It's good to see you doing well." Mark shared his full story, leaving nothing out. He spoke about how her music had stopped him from making a tragic decision, how it inspired his transformation, and how it led him back to love and happiness. "You gave me something no one else could that day, hope. And I'll never be able to repay you enough for that. But I want to try." Ashley was moved by his words. Before she could respond, Mark continued, "I have a proposal for you. I want to help share your music with the world. You have an incredible talent and a powerful message. I'd like to pay for your music education, help you prepare professionally, and use my connections to open doors that you deserve to walk through." Ashley blinked, trying to hold back tears. "But why?" Mark smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Because you gave me life when I had lost all hope." Ashley was silent for a few seconds, letting Mark's words sink in. She had never imagined that her music, something she always saw as a way to spread joy, could have such a profound impact. Finally, she nodded with an emotion-filled smile. "I accept. And more than that, I thank you." In that moment, a new chapter began in Ashley's life. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. The music that had once saved a life was now about to touch the hearts of many more. With Mark's help and encouragement, Ashley dived into a world that once seemed out of reach. She began formally studying music, honing the natural talent that had already captivated so many. She learned to play new instruments and dedicated herself passionately to songwriting. Each lesson and rehearsal became an opportunity to channel her emotions into music. Before long, Ashley started performing in bars and small venues. Her audience, initially small, grew with every performance. People were deeply moved by her heartfelt lyrics and the unique way she sang about life struggles while also celebrating the beauty hidden in each day. Her story of resilience and gratitude shone through every note, touching the hearts of everyone who listened. Mark was always nearby, cheering her on as both a mentor and a friend. He used his connections to introduce her to people in the music industry, opening doors that once seemed unattainable. In no time, Ashley's songs began playing on local radio stations. One of her tracks, which spoke about finding light in the darkness, became an unexpected hit. Soon her fame spread, and Ashley became known as a voice of hope and perseverance. For Mark and Christina, watching Ashley's rise felt like reliving their own story of love and renewal. Mark saw in Ashley a reflection of the strength he had discovered when everything seemed lost, while Christina admired the positive impact Ashley was having on the world. The destinies of Ashley, Mark, and Christina became irrevocably intertwined. They formed a close friendship, a kind of family born from unexpected circumstances. While Ashley shone on stage, Mark and Christina lived the love they had rebuilt, stronger and more united than ever. Ashley often dedicated her performances to people facing hardships, encouraging them never to give up. She understood that her music had not only saved Mark but was now touching the lives of thousands around the world.